This is Roger Simon for Pajamas Media. I'm here with Bill Bradley, and we have the pleasure of interviewing Congressman Brad Sherman here in the 27th District, how do you do, of the San Fernando Valley in California, what we call the Valley. Well, let's turn to the anti-Semitism paper. This came out of the State Department that your wife had something to do with, I understand. Could you tell us just briefly what the conclusions were?
Well, first, I take real pride in this. I didn't write a sentence of it, but my wife wrote virtually the whole thing. Now, the easy part it was writing it. Now, when I say easy part, I mean you have to be extremely good to write it. I'm very proud of the report. But what is the real hard part is clearing it. That is to say, it's one thing for, say Pajamas or ADL or somebody wants to write a report on anti-Semitism. You hire a PhD, you put him in a room for 2 months, and he comes back with a report. Right. Or she comes back with a report. The hard part is getting the report cleared. That means you've got to go to every bureau and agency in the State Department and say, here's what we're planning to put out as official U.S. policy. Is that okay with you? The report's conclusion is first, and I think most importantly, a good definition of anti-Semitism that includes extreme anti-Zionism as well. When the criticism of Israel is not of just a particular action, but says this one country amongst all the others shouldn't exist, or this one country is going to be judged by a completely different standard, that you have to ask why. Why one Jewish state is being treated differently from all other states, and the answer may very well be anti-Semitism. And so the first thing is getting the United States on record that anti-Zionism, not just criticism of the Jewish state, but anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. The second thing is that in general we see the problem rising in most parts of the world. And finally, you see an awful lot of anti-Semitism in the actions of the United Nations and its constituent
Urban conferences.
Yes.
New things from Reverend Wright's church newsletter. Would you like me to read it to you so you can hear it?
I haven't seen anything new from Reverend Wright in days.
Okay. I know you're feeling deprived. This is from CBS News. Reverend Wright's church newsletter includes commentary critical of Israel. Barack Obama's controversial former pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, continues to make headlines. The most recent focus, his church's newsletter. On a June 10th, 2007 issue of the newsletter, during the campaign obviously, featured an open letter written by Ali Baghdadi appearing on the pastor's page that calls Israel, quote, an apartheid regime. The letter says Israel worked on an ethnic bomb that kills blacks and Arabs. The letter also says Israel was the closest ally to the white supremacists of South Africa, close quote. In the introduction to an article printed on the pastor's page on July 7th, 2007, Wright references the, quote, in quotes, the state of Israel. Note the quotation marks around the word state, what you were just talking about. And on July 22nd, the pastor's page carried a pro-Palestinian article by Hamas leader Musa Abu Marzouk, I'm sure you're familiar with him, excerpted from the Los Angeles Times. Why should any Palestinian recognize the monstrous crimes carried out by Israel's founders and continued by its deformed modern apartheid state? Marzouk asks. And then it goes on, could these hurt Obama, blah, blah, blah. Do you think this fits in with the kind of anti-Semitism described in the State Department document?
Well, clearly you have a lot of anti-Semitism in the quotes that you've made there. But frankly, that's kind of second. There's 2 degrees of separation between Obama and those statements. Obama has some affiliation with Reverend Wright, and then Reverend Wright has some affiliation with what appears on the quote pastor's page of his newsletter.
But he was the pastor.
But it is a second degree of separation in that none of the comments you read there are the words of Reverend Wright. Now that contrasts to what has already come out. And when you see these clips, the first round of clips, one of the things that was glossed over because people were just so shocked by the clips that they didn't focus on this, is he describes Israel as a terrorist state. And so Reverend Wright's own words in the clips that came out a couple weeks ago are already incredibly harshly anti-Israel. I think that Obama's speech was just an outstanding speech, but not directly relevant to the concern. The concern I have is, why were you with Reverend Wright? What did you know about Reverend Wright? What should you have learned about Reverend Wright if you exercise due diligence? Why did you know enough about Reverend Wright when you made your announcement in Springfield of your presidential race enough to disinvite him? What did you know then, and what did you do immediately after that early 2007 speech, if you knew enough to disinvite him, to find out what else was out there?
Now, Congressman, you're a supporter of Hillary Clinton's, of course. In the not impossible event that Barack Obama, who of course is leading, is the Democratic nominee, how much trouble do you think he'll find himself in with your constituents?
Well, I think my constituents are so upset with the Republicans right now that he'll face only a modest problem. But I think time will tell. Basically, we have several months to see how this plays out. And during those months, I would expect that Obama will do more to explain this issue that has me concerned, and that is, why the close association, what did he know about Reverend Wright? And the fact is, I'm sure there are many good things about Reverend Wright. And Obama has already explained how Reverend Wright led him to Christ. I'm not a Christian myself, but I can see how someone who was a Christian would regard that as a very important and a thing that would bind them to somebody. So I'm sure there are many good things about Reverend Wright, but there are these comments, and we'll have to see what Obama can do, not just to explain the importance of race in America and how we all need to live together, where we've been and where we need to go. That was a brilliant speech, but that speech he should have given and would have been applauded in giving had he never met Reverend Wright. He needs to explain this relationship, and he finally did disaffiliate with Reverend Wright by removing him from his clergy advisory committee of his campaign. So whereas he would not, could not, did not, hasn't been asked to, and shouldn't disassociate himself from his grandmother, who I'm sure is as close to him now as she was a year ago. And I don't know anything about his grandmother except what I saw in the speech, and I gather from that speech that his grandmother is still alive and is no doubt fairly old. So I don't know anything about his grandmother except that he cannot, should not, and has not disassociated himself, whereas he has vis-a-vis.
Well, on the note of grandmother love, we will wrap up this great discussion. Something every American, I hope, can agree on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it.
Thank you.